Yeah, come on. Than ever before. Hey, I am so excited about today because this isn't the conclusion of this series necessarily, but it is definitely a pivot point in the series. Now, somebody pointed out that my hair looked a little Saved by the Bell in some of those pictures, and that's fine. And I know what some of you are thinking. She ages much better than him, and that's fine too, because guys, we all want to marry up, and I sure did. Come on. Hey, turn with me to Joshua chapter 4. Hey, if you're our guest today, meaning this is your first or second time with us, I am so glad that you're here. Some of the things in your seat are relevant to you. As Matt said, that little first time experience card, we'd love for you to interact with that. But the booklet that you see that's a pledge card, that's for anybody who's been here 3 weeks or more. Because if you've been here 3 weeks or more, you're part of our church. And we have been talking about, hey, there comes a point where we're going to ask you, me specifically, to give like you've never given before. And today is where we begin that process. We're going to give you all the information. We're going to give you the look of the building. We're going to give you the cost of the building. And we're going to give you all those details and information. We're even going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Questions at Brentwood.Church.org. Questions at Brentwood.Church.org. If you have questions, you will have questions. And we're going to try to compile those on a frequently asked questions for everybody else who may have that same question. So please, if you have a question, submit it so that we can answer it for not only you, but for everyone today. Today is going to be different. This will not be our typical experience, but I believe it's going to be exciting for you. It's going to be informative, and you are going to be inspired to do exactly what all of us have been prepping to do, and that is build Brentwood. Now, what have we seen throughout this series as we've tracked through the book of Joshua, as we've tracked through the journey of Israel, moving from wanderers in the wilderness and in the desert and becoming warriors for a land that God had promised them? That's a parallel of where we are. We are wandering in temporary space. God is moving. He's doing amazing things and building lives and families and leaders and communities and fulfilling the mission that he's given us. But we know that our next season is us seeing God do so much more through, yes, building a building, but it's so much more than just a building. And this is a journey for us. And we want to talk about that journey. We've talked about greater growth, which if I were to ask everybody here today, hey, do you want to grow? I think most people would say yes. But what does that require? Greater growth requires facing greater fear and greater sacrifice. That's when people start going, wait a minute, do I really want to grow? Because if you want to grow, we see this in the first week of this series, you got to face greater fear and greater sacrifice. Week 2, we said, okay, if you want to grow and you want to grow in a greater way, you've got to take risk. You've got to take not only risk, but greater risk, because greater growth requires greater risk. And that's just it. If you don't want to grow, then don't take greater risk. Then last week we said, okay, greater growth requires leaders to grow first. And today you're going to see how the leaders in this church, both the senior team leaders, men and women who are volunteers on our senior teams, our staff leadership, and other people in our church who are leading the way in the giving and the grace of giving, we're going to see how they have grown first in this giving towards building Brentwood. But today, I want to interact with one more greater growth axiom, and this is so important if you want to grow. Greater growth requires greater worship. Greater growth requires greater worship. What is worship? Essentially, it is giving credit where credit is due. And that's saying, I am going to give my heart, soul, mind, and strength to that which I believe is giving me life. That's what it means. Giving credit where credit's due. And what God tells us is when we do that, when we give him credit, when we are grateful for what he's done in our life, when we acknowledge it, when we memorialize it in certain ways, when we give high five to it, when we go to our knees at times, when we are faithful and obedient in times of struggle, and we lift our voices and we lift our hearts and we say, God, it is because of you and you alone, that I even exist, that I'm even here in this place at this time with a name, with the frame, and a vision for the future. It is because of you. And if you want me to give you a little bit more of my heart, a little bit more of my mind, a little bit more of my soul, a little bit more of my strength, a little bit more of my stuff, sign me up. Because greater growth requires what? Greater. Yeah, greater worship. Giving credit where credit is due. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the credit for my life, even being here, and right now, has nothing to do with how talented I am. Trust me. Has nothing to do with how strong I am. Trust me. Has nothing to do with how I've overcome. Trust me. It has everything to do with God's power and presence in my life. And me being able to, at strategic moments, every day, every season, being able to say, okay, God, here's a little bit more. Here's a little bit more of me. Here's a little bit more of me, because I trust you. And if we're gonna grow individually, I mean, I would think most of us would say, yeah, I wanna grow spiritually. Well, it means greater worship. And worship is just saying, okay, God. Worship is about the past. It's about looking back and saying, God, you did this in my life. Yeah, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, all those seasons of my life, you were there in that time, giving purpose and meaning and power and presence in that. And I have to applaud you, and I have to say, God, it's because of you. It's about our present. It's about this moment right here, right now, being in this time together and being in this space together and saying, okay, individually and collectively, we're gonna give credit where credit's due, and we're gonna give credit to God that we are saved by his grace through faith in Jesus Christ, his one and only Son. It's about our future. It's about saying, okay, God, I will give you even more of my heart, soul, mind, and strength because you have given me hope and purpose for a future that I don't even know what it's gonna look like. That's what worship is. And it brings us to the culmination of what we're talking about today, and that's this question. What does Building Brentwood do for us? What does it do for us? Here's the bottom line. Here's what it does for us. It gives us an opportunity to grow in worship. That's it. It gives us an opportunity to grow in worship. You say, well, what do you mean? It's a spiritual journey. And if you haven't gotten that yet, if you think this is just a fundraising campaign or a stewardship initiative in the church, then you've missed it. But let me make it very clear for you. This is an opportunity for you to grow in a greater way in greater worship. One of the most tangible ways that you and I worship is through how we give and what we give to. And that's really what we see Joshua in the 4th chapter of this book, as Israel has already crossed over the Jordan River. Look what it says, verse 1. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go into the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulders. That's a big stone. 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. A memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, they remind us. They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's covenant went across. The stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. Write this down. Memorials remind us of God's faithfulness in specific seasons. And so what does God command Joshua and Israel to do? I want you to take 12 stones. These 12 stones mean something. I want you to pile them up, and I want you to leave them there as a memorial. And memorials aren't just about the past. He even says it. When your children, the children you haven't even had yet, when they ask you, you can point and you can say, this is what God did in this season of my life, in this season of our lives. It's about the past, But it's also about the present. And it's about the future, because we get to tell our future children in a present moment, hey, you teach your children this. This is what God does. God doesn't only show up, he's already there. He shows off. He shows off how awesome he is. And we worship him. We build a memorial, not to worship the memorial, no, but to point back to what God has done in our lives. And you know what? Last week we talked about how giving the first and 10 of our income is like a memorial. It's like a memorial. It's like, before I spend anything, before I consume any of this, I'm going to give the first 10% to God. And that's really where we see today culminating. That as we start to journey through a season of greater growth and greater sacrifice, greater obedience, greater risk, greater giving, and ultimately greater worship, we are going to see something that Building Brentwood, what is it? It is a memorial to God's power and faithfulness in this season. It's more than a physical space. It's more than a physical building. It is that, but it's a memorial. It's a way of saying this present group of people, right here and right now, we are looking into the future, looking beyond ourselves, and we are saying to our future children, our future grandchildren, our future neighbors, their kids, their marriages, all of that, we're saying we're going to, in this moment, carry some stones on our shoulders. We're going to give it away. We're going to exert some things that we have, and we're going to pile that up, and we're going to build Brentwood. But it's about building more than just a structure. But that structure means something big in our history. And it's pointing back, and it's resting here, and it's pointing ahead. And so that's what I want to talk about, really, for the next few minutes. I've asked some of the leaders of our church to come up here. I'm going to ask Ariel, Tammy, Brett, and Nick to come talk about these 4 ideas and how they are the vision, but how they are also our acts or our actions of worship. Come on up here. You guys give these guys some love.
Good morning, Brentwood. Awesome. Well, my name's Ariel, and I get the opportunity to chat with you guys today and share with you about transformation. These 4 major actions are the ways that we are seeing God tangibly move at Brentwood.Church. And so I get the honor to share about transformation, which is about building lives. So we want you to imagine what a 24/7 ministry space would be like, in which more people encounter the good news of Jesus, in which more people encounter God's presence through our hospitality. Imagine what we're doing here already, but just magnified even more, just an exponential multiplication. And so from our hospitality and people experiencing the kindness and the love that they experience just through the atmosphere that we create, from the tangible ways that they get to experience God through our worship services, where we get to honor God for who he is and what he's done and what he's still yet to do. And as we sing praises and as we worship together, that people get to experience God in that they get to experience God through the truth that we get to proclaim in these experiences, all because we believe an encounter with Jesus is transformative. So I want to tell you a story that I just heard recently, and it just actually happened a couple weeks ago. And for the sake that the story is still new, I'm going to change the names of the people in this story. So there's Alyssa and Amber. And so Alyssa is a Collide student, and she has been coming to Collide. Collide is our Wednesday night high school ministry. They meet at the office. Yeah, shout out to the Collide. Yeah, you guys can give yourself a shout out. I like it. So they meet at our Brentwood offices in Windhurst. It's a small office space. Used to be a J. Crew store, and then it became like a runner store, and now it's our office space. And we get to turn that into a place where these students love to spend time and in which they encounter Jesus. And so it's their heart to create those experiences just like we do here on Sunday. And so they put together a worship night. And so this young lady got really excited about it. She told some of her friends and she invited them, and she invited one of her friends. We're going to call her Amber. And she invited Amber, and Amber had never experienced church before. And so, but she was excited that her friend invited her, so she came on out to the worship night. And that night, the presence of God was undeniable. And she got to experience that, and she felt like she had encountered something totally different than anything she had ever experienced before. And it stuck with her, and it shook her. And over the next couple days, she could not shake the feeling of what she had experienced that night in that room. And she was hanging out with Alyssa, and they were just spending time together, and she wanted to keep talking about Collide and talking about what had happened. And so Alyssa talked to her about God, and the more and more they talked, it got to a point where Amber wanted to make a decision to believe in and follow Jesus right there in Alyssa's bedroom. Yeah. So that young student, had this her life had been transformed by God through Collide and through what was happening there. She led another student, and then that young girl is actually getting baptized this coming Sunday, on Easter Sunday. Yeah. And that's just happening in our small office space in which we can transform it into a place where transformation happens. And, what we get to do, we have this value at Brentwood.Church that we say that we give up comfort to reach more people because we believe a person's eternity is worth fighting for. And we believe that truly, and so much so, we do what we do here on Sundays because we believe that. We believe that this room is a place in which people can encounter Jesus because we're here. We carry the power and presence of Jesus, but also because the presence of Jesus comes here in an undeniable way, and we get to see that through worship, through teaching of the truth, through the response that happens down here as people are experiencing life change and lives are being healed and they're experiencing breakthroughs. And so it's already happening, but don't you believe there's so much more yet to come? I do. And so that's why we want to create this 24/7 ministry space in which we will have a presence not just on Sundays or throughout the week in our very limited ability at the office, but a place where we have multiple rooms in which multiple experiences are happening so that more people can have those transformational experiences, where Brentwood kids can grow and students can grow. We have more discipleship, more worship experiences, because we really do believe that one encounter with Jesus, just like the disciples, just like Zacchaeus, just like the woman at the well, and just like Amber, experiencing God, encountering Jesus can truly change a life. So as we continue to share this morning, you're going to hear us keep saying, imagine this space, imagine this space. That's really what we want you guys to do. We want you to think about these areas, and I want to challenge you to think about transformation. When did you have that transformational encounter in your life where you really grew and became who you are today? And hopefully you have experienced that with Jesus. So when was that with Jesus too? And just think about the people, the countless people in our community who have still yet to experience that transformational moment with Jesus. And that's what we want to create in this place. We want to create it for the kids that are yet to be born. Maybe some of you are pregnant here today. Think about the transformational encounters that your child's going to experience. I think about the family I want to have, and that this place is going to be a place they're going to grow up and learn about Jesus. If you've got young kids, this is where they're learning the building blocks of who God is, Jesus, our Savior, of what He's done. And so just think about that. Think of all the people who have yet to publicly declare that God is their Savior and that Jesus has transformed their life and given them victory. That's what this building is going to allow us to continue to do more than ever and create those things that then the rest of us are going to even explain about restoration and development and connection. So Tammy's going to share about restoration.
Good morning. Good morning, Brentwood Church. Yes, Building Brentwood is about restoration. And as you know, there are so many broken families in our community and absentee parents. And at Brentwood, we have a God-given angst to bring hope and healing to our community and to our city. And so we want to do that through Building Brentwood. But we believe that we're already doing that right now. And so I want to share a few stories and some stats for you guys so that you know how we're currently doing it. Right now, we see over 300 kids. On average, sometimes it's over 400 each week, but on average, we see over 300 kids experience one of our environments through students and middle school and kids. And over 16 kids right now are getting baptized this coming Sunday that are 18 and under. Yeah, so God's really moving in that area. And so another area is we are about, restoring marriages. And we do that through our counseling program. But we also want to start those marriages out right. And so we have engaged. We have seen over 50 couples go through our counseling marriage mentors. And we see marriages making shifts and changes all throughout our body. One area that I want to highlight is our care and response team. And this is a story of a lady whose marriage was changed through a lady on our care and response team. And this is what Ashley says. She says, it all started on June 11th, 2017. I found myself sitting on the front row of Brentwood, invited by family. Stemming from my past and the state of my marriage at the time, I found myself feeling worthless, hopeless, bitter, lonely, angry, and thought for sure my marriage was ending or that I would live in misery for the rest of my life. I didn't believe that I was worthy of God's love or anyone's love. She goes on to say, for years, I had believed lies that the enemy fed me. However, the way that I experienced God, my first time attending Brentwood.Church, completely blew my mind and rocked my world. God showed up and literally showed me a miracle. He made it personal when he spoke straight through a woman on our care team. She hardly knew me, and God used her to tear down walls and barriers. She called out my marriage for what it was. She told me that God loved me more than I knew, and she reminded me that I needed to surrender to him and see myself the way he sees me. To walk in his authority, to stop believing the lies I had told myself for years. I was blown away. I was scared. I had no words. I literally broke down in tears. And catch this next line, which this gives me goosebumps, but she says, it was an encounter with God that I had never experienced before. Wow, I am still just in awe of what he did and what he is still doing. I have been to Brentwood every Sunday since that day. My husband started to join me in September, and he will tell you he had a very similar experience. God spoke directly to him through the church. I am so happy to say that our marriage has been restored and redeemed. Yeah. So another area that is really close to my heart is our special needs team. And we know that families are attracted here because we do have a place for their children to be cared for and loved on. And this is our transition team. I just want to give a shout out. They do an incredible job ministering to these families. And I don't know that a lot of us know this, but the divorce rate is so high in that area, like with those parents of special needs because of the stress level. And as a church, we want to say we invite everyone. There's a place for everyone in our space. And so I am so excited about our future and our future space that's permanent for our special needs ministry. Another area that is close to my heart is Mosaic. And if you don't know about Mosaic, it is a ministry for our foster and adoptive families. And that's not just families here that go to Brentwood. This is our foster and adoptive families all over our city. We know that we live in a broken world, and there are kids that need to be fostered and adopted. And so we have taken ground to say, hey, we want to do something about that in our city. And so we try to do everything we can to provide support and love to these families, giving them a place of of connection so they don't sit in isolation. And we do this we bring them bags. We give DSS bags that are filled with $100 worth of items. If you did not know that, it's an incredible way for us to give their first night of items that they need. The other area is meals, and we do that by delivering meals when people get their first when they get that child for the first night. And the other specific area that we are doing and we're going after is dinner and date nights. And at dinner and date nights, it's dinner and date. It's where we invite our whole city, anybody who has fostered and adopted, and say, we want you to get into community. We know how hard it is for you. And so we're going to take care of your kids, and we're going to feed you a meal. And so we have done that over the years, and we have seen people come to this church because of that, and people's lives that have been changed because of dinner and date nights. But one specific story that I want to share with you is years ago, there was a husband and wife who sat in Brentwood service just like we have today, and they heard about Mosaic, and they answered the call to become a foster and adoptive family. And that is our new Mosaic director, Sean Mills. And so him and his wife took on 2 girls, and now they have adopted these girls. And John mentioned a few weeks ago, but these 2 girls, they were at home watching church online, and they gave their life to Jesus in their living room. But not only that, but Sean and Aaron have taken this on to say, it doesn't matter what battles are ahead. We believe in this, and we're going to keep going. And they just invited another foster child into their home. And this child, 2 weeks ago, in our Rooted ministry, decided to believe and follow Jesus for the first time. Yeah. So Sean and Aaron have been a part, and so have you, of changing a generation forever. Forever. And that is what Building Brentwood is about restoring families and restoring lives. And imagine how much exponentially more we can do with a 24/7 presence, where we can have our actual own dinner and date nights, and our kitchen that we can provide the food in, and a place for us to pack bags, and for counseling rooms for people to get counsel, not in a locker room, although that's great. But it's amazing what I believe God is going to be able to do exponentially more with a 24/7 presence. So Building Brentwood is about restoring families and lives. And now I want us to talk about development, and Brett Club's going to bring it.
Yes, all right. So development. Listen, a lot of churches do development, and it's development at its lowest practical sense is just helping people to grow. Okay, and so churches have that, but and they do that. You need to know that for Brentwood Church, it's not something that we do. It's really a part of who we are. It's in our DNA. It's a core value that we would develop people. It happens organically. All you have to do is go to a coffee shop or Chick-fil-A in the morning, and you will see a couple of Brentwood people sitting across the table, drinking a latte or eating a Chick-fil-A biscuit, which now you all want Chick-fil-A, and you can't have it because it's Sunday. But that's why we love them. And they're doing development, but we also do it on the very systematic sense. We have internships here, semester and summer interns, where we take in college students who feel a call towards ministry. We help to get them into ministry, get their feet wet, their hands dirty, to develop them as they go through college. We also have a residency where we invite men and women post-college to come on staff for 2 years to get intentional development, to feel the weight of ministry, and to be able to send them out. So that's something that we do. And, since we started this kind of formal development process about 4 years ago, we've seen over 50 interns come through our program, 11 residents come through our program, which we're really excited. And maybe you're saying, okay, what does that have to do with me? It's nice that we do development, but honestly, I'm not really affected or impacted, or I don't really feel that. It's nice, but I don't feel that. Well, let me do this, okay? This needs some participation. If you have a child in Brentwood Kids or a student in Rooted or Collide, raise your hand right now. A child in Brentwood Kids or a student in Rooted or Collide. Raise your hand, high. Okay, excellent. Well, you need to know that you've been impacted by development. Matt Weaver, who's our Brentwood Kids director, he was our very first resident, and he survived, and we hired him, and he's taking that ministry to the places it's never been before. Zach Buckholt was another resident of ours. We hired him, and he's leading student ministries to places it's never been before. And so if you have a child in this church, you've been impacted by development. If you've watched a service online, if you enjoy our baptisms, the greatest Sunday that we have in the year, next week, baptisms are led by a current resident. You have been impacted and influenced by our development. But it isn't just about Brentwood Church. Development is about the church as well. It's about being selfless, for us investing time and energy and resources in these men and women for the sake of the church, the global church, in ways that we won't probably ever see the fruit on this side of heaven. We probably won't see the full scope of impact here on earth. But we know that God has called us to this. In fact, we have men and women literally in different states even now that we have developed and sent out. We have a guy, Donnie Angel, who's at Life Church in Oklahoma. David Haight, who's at Liberty Baptist Church in Northern Virginia. Josiah Pitts, who's at Horizons Church. Ryan Wingfield at Destiny Church. We've got Richard Gatton at 12 Stone Church. We have... where did he? Nathan. I told Nathan, I forgot him in the first service. Nathan, who's still here, but also is a chaplain in the Air Force, not the Navy, because he'll get offended if you say that, the Air Force. But we've been able to develop him, and now he's going to impact lives of men and women in the military. And so that's us giving to the church, to the global church. This is something that David Haight, who's in... Liberty Baptist Church in Northern Virginia, he says this: I'm currently the young adult pastor at Liberty Baptist in Hampton Roads. It's a multi-site church that has 4 different sites currently. Through implementing the things I've learned at Brentwood, we've seen the young adult ministry grow from a dying part of the church to a vibrant piece of faith and community. 20-somethings are taking real concrete steps to go further and deeper in their faith. People have taken their next step to go all in with baptism. People have stepped up and given back to the church through service, and people have been brought from death to life. He goes back to talk about how he was developed, his character as a man, as a follower of Jesus was developed, but he also got really practical best practices to be able to implement in another church, in another area of Virginia. And we as a church got to be a part of that. Not only are we going to continue to do that at greater lengths, but next year we are launching a college, a 1-year post-high school college for men and women who feel an early call into ministry. And so we've been working on this really hard the past year, and with a partnership with Liberty University to get transfer credit, where we, for a year, take men and women who they know that God's calling them to full-time ministry. They may not know exactly what that looks like, because who does at 18 years old knows what the rest of their life is going to look like. If you do, come talk to me. I just want to be around you. But to say, okay, we're going to give you academics. They're going to be in the classroom. We're going to be teaching them academics through textbooks and teaching them God's word and how you read it and how you teach it. But also we're going to have them in ministry areas, actually doing ministry and learning how to fail and learning how to succeed in ministry, the difficult parts that it's hard to really see in a classroom. We're going to have a chance as a church through the Brentwood Institute to do that. And then after they graduate from the Brentwood Institute, they can decide to go on with transfer credits to Liberty, or maybe whatever their next step is. And so we as a church have an opportunity. We're gonna launch that next year, with or without a building, and just figure out where we can meet. We may have to meet outside and do classes outside, but we're gonna do this. But how awesome would it be to have a building where every single day of the week, classrooms are filled with men and women who are being trained up and equipped to lead the next generation church into the next decade. And I'm really excited that we as a church have an opportunity to do that. Development, it's about developing leaders, and there's so much more for us to go after. So now we're gonna hear from Nick and Connection. So get up for Nick Moustakis.
I want to start this morning by sharing a story with you as we talk about connection. Last summer, a young Brentwood family was at a pretty big crossroads. They had experienced God's restorative power in their marriage. They'd experienced God's restoration in their relationship with their children. They'd even seen God restore their passion for the very things of Him and the desire to be in ministry. But after following an out-of-state job opportunity that ended up not coming to fruition, they were left wondering, what do we do next? And the easy answer was just to stay where they were at, right? God had called them out of Virginia. They were done with this, so they were going to just stay where they were at. There was family that they could live with. And over the next 8 weeks during the summer, they tried to get involved in the community. They tried to find a place for their children. They tried to kind of integrate and figure out, what can we do here? They even found another church that they could start to attend so they could be involved somewhere. And one Sunday morning, they'd come to church, much like a lot of us do here, and they dropped their kids off at the kids program. But this couple, instead of going into the service, went over to the coffee area. And they weren't just going over to the coffee area to get a cup of coffee. They were going over there to continue this fight that they had been having. But they had this type of fight. You know the type of fight where you're like completely kind of silent, but you're still fighting, and it's clear that you're fighting? And while they were fighting, they were asking this question, what do we do next? And while they're clearly fighting, and this is clearly happening in the middle of the lobby, right, of this church, 1, 2, 3 key leaders in that church walked right past that table and didn't stop to offer to pray with them. Didn't stop to say, how can we help you? How can we connect with you? And it was in that moment that the couple realized something. They said this would never have happened at Brentwood. Someone would have stopped us. Someone would have helped us get connected. Someone would have prayed with us. So in that moment, on faith, they made the decision that they were going to go back to Virginia. They were going to go back and be a part of what God was doing at Brentwood. They went over 400 miles with just the promise of a part-time job to step out in faith and say, yes, that's where we're supposed to be. And the reason why I know that story so well is that's my story. That's the story of my wife, Julie, and I, and our boys, Noah and Colton. We came back on faith believing that God wanted us to be here at Brentwood because we believed one thing, that here we would find the community that we were looking for. And you know what we did? Our closest friends are in this church. And here's the exciting thing. We know we're not alone. Last year at Brentwood, 756 individuals found deeper community in one of our community groups. Recently I was talking with one of our group mentors, and they shared this story with me. One night at the end of the group, they said, you know what, we want to pray over the people in our group. And so they just started asking people what they could pray for. And 2 guys in that group that night realized that they were both going through really tough separations. One didn't even really have the will to live the next day. But because they found that connection, because they found that community, they started to grow together, and now they're actively serving in our church. Last year, 810 people were considered world changers here at Brentwood. These are the ones who are serving us every single Sunday. And recently I asked one of our world changers to say, why do you do this? Why do you come here every Sunday? And they said, I do it because when I first came, someone helped me feel known. Someone made me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself. Last year, 2,480 individuals came to Brentwood for the first time, and they're experiencing this. And the crazy thing is, this is all happening in a space that we rent on a Sunday, in offices that we rent on Sunday, in people's homes. So imagine a 24/7 ministry center, a 24/7 center of connection. I just start to dream when I think of that. I think of the family who barely knows each other, right? The wife, the kids, the husband, they're just kind of running place to place, and they decide one night to just take a picnic dinner to the property where the building is going to be, and they just have dinner together and reconnect. I think of that marriage that was much like mine, that was hanging on by a thread, and they decide to just get one more cup of coffee in our cafe, maybe even after a Sunday service, and what happens? That marriage begins to be restored. I think about the new relationships that are going to come. This building is so much more than that. It's a 24/7 place of connection where we are going to be able to build community. Now this morning, we've been talking about transformation, restoration, development, and connection. And I want to invite you right now to make this personal. And so in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up. And what I want you to do is just take 60 seconds and turn to at least one other individual and say, I've seen God work in this way, in this area in my life. So right now, why don't you go ahead and stand up and let's make this personal.
Okay, Brentwood.Church. I love hearing the chatter about what you're expecting and what you've seen at Brentwood.Church so far. But I have an exciting thing that I get to do next with you. And I'm going to need a little bit of a drum roll. But first, I want you to know that I'm going to be showing the plans, okay, of our future building. So, drum roll, please. Yep. Okay. Here it is. There it is. You see it? Okay. So this is a 76,000 square foot building. Okay, pretty amazing. And we've had consultants come in and look and research and walk through our space and find out our numbers and all that. And this is a place that will suit our needs and our future needs in the years to come. And so this is our future building, which is super exciting. The next picture you're going to see is our aerial view of the inside. And I'm going to... if you guys can see this right here, this section, okay? That section right there is what ETR was. So that gives you some perspective. If those of you who were out at ETR, if not, sorry, it was 14,000 square foot. So is that section right there. That kind of gives you a perspective of how large the building is. The next one is, the next shot you're gonna see is our main hallway. This is the main entrance to our building. And I'll explain our family entrance later, but this is where most people will come in who are new without children. This is the main area. This is our new here area. Yep, it's our new here team who greet our first-time guests, and they won't have to meet and greet outside in the cold or the hot. They'll be right inside. So this is exciting. The next area is our cafe. I know you guys like coffee, right? So this is where we're going to be serving coffee and places for people to hang out. I do look forward to this space being used even like during the week for mentorship and development. But also that's what I feel like sometimes. We will be right near where JF is, and hopefully kids will go over there and hang out together after school and be able to hang out in the cafe. So that's an exciting place. Our next area is our World Changer Lounge, which I know many of you, since we have 810 World Changers, many of you will spend time in here. And this is where it links into the kitchen. So that will be where we serve breakfast, and we won't be doing anything illegal by making breakfast, but we'll have it actually legal there. That's good. Okay, so that's our World Changer area. This next area is our Next Step Nook, which is where you guys, where people take their next step at Brentwood, sign up for things and sorts. Right next to it, you can see there's our Mosaic resource room. That is much needed because we have a team that comes together, pack bags. We keep them available until the local DSSs call and say, hey, we need bags. We need a 2-year-old bag, or we need a 17-year-old bag, and we're able to pull those bags out of that room. You also can see down that hallway where our Brentwood Kids area will be. The next view is our auditorium aerial view. This auditorium, and we can just keep going through the slides, but this auditorium seats over 1,600 people. It has the capacity of that if we use these chairs. So it has a lot of capacity to do many things. Now, this piece is really important because this is what it will look like on our Mosaic dinner and date nights. This will seat over 500 adults in these round tables, which really bring community for that group of people. But I'm sure there's many other things that we will use those round tables for, but that is what that looks like there. The next area that we're going to look at is our care rooms, and those are so important because we have a response culture here. And as you know, people come up and they get prayer, and sometimes they need to take it a step further and be able to spend some time one-on-one with our care and response team or our counselors. And so these are rooms that are set aside for that. They're also used for dual purposes, which is for during the week we have our staff who will be using them also for meetings as well. The next area, and I'll get a hoop and holler over here, is our student hangout area. Yes. So they're excited about that. Okay, so this is for Rooted, and I'm going to assume Collide for a little bit until they outgrow it really fast. But this is our student lounge, and it may or may not come with a pool table, but it is in there for fun purposes. So the next area is our student theater, and they will have their worship and teaching time in there. The next is our family area. Now, like I said earlier, there will be a family entrance. There is a parking lot for families to walk in, which I know will be great for family drop-off. And you are able to come in this direction, and there will be our 4 weeks to pre-K on the right, and then our older kids on the left. And then also a new hair area for those new families. This is an aerial view of all of it. There's a special needs classroom. There's theaters for both preschool and elementary. Hallelujah, there are bathrooms in all of the rooms for those who help take care of children. I know you guys like that. And then this is a preschool theater. The next is our offices, which will be our staff that will work in that space throughout the week. And then the last is our green room. You can see that space over there that connects to our auditorium. Another area that's really important and exciting is and we don't have a view of it, but it is our, oh my goodness, I lost the word, sorry. A recording studio. Thank you, Brett Club. A recording studio for our musicians to record our awesome music that we're already, they've already written and recorded right now, but we would love to have a space that our Brentwood music can record music. So that's exciting. But all of this costs something, right? You guys are wondering. Well, I have a number. It's not free. Okay, so we are looking at a cost of $9.4 million for this building. Okay, so when you break it down with the $76,000, I'm sure somebody will do the math in here. It is a good price, and we've been working with the builder to get the price lower. We were up higher, and we've changed the land. We've changed where the building sits to be able to do that, and so we have gone to great lengths to find other buildings that we could just move into, other spaces to move into that may be cheaper, and we have not found that. So if you know where that space is, let us know. But for right now, this is the direction God has for us, and we are going full force ahead until He decides to make a U-turn if that's what God wants. But we are excited. We believe that this is doable. We wouldn't walk through these doors if it wasn't doable, but it will take sacrifice and miraculous funding from the Lord and through this group of people. Our projected campaign commitments that we are projecting for this group of people to get to is $4 million to be able to do this project. We expect $400,000 on grants. We do have a grant writer in-house that's writing grants to see if we can get $400,000. In grants. The cash that we have on hand is $544,000 right now. We are debt-free. We paid cash for the land, and so that's important for you guys to know. But we will have to take a loan out for 4.65. I pray for that God just provides all the funds, and we are debt-free. That's really what I want to be, is debt-free, right? Yes. But we want to plan and prepare accordingly, and so we have gone to banks and we've been pre-approved for this amount, and we feel like it's a doable amount for us to go into, but it is going to take sacrifice from our body. Now, something that is really important for you guys to know is where are we to date with our pledges? And you'd think we were at zero, right? Because we're just presenting it. But we have been having individual meetings, and we have had a gala event for people who have gone before and made early commitments that everyone was invited to. And that as of today, this morning, we have $2,004,850 in pledges already. But here's what's really cool. Not added into this number, 55,000 came in this morning. So it's really cool how God's moving and growing that number. And it was a really stretch for our leadership team. And as we prayed over this, and this was a huge marker for us to even be at this point before going before the church. And so I'm excited about what God's going to do through all of us. And the timeline of this, I know that's a big question, is like, when is this going to happen? It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we are praying for it to happen as soon as possible. But it is, the timing and the approach will change depending on the timing of when funds come in. So this is over a 3-year period. And so as money comes in, we will just make decisions based on that, on when we can start. So all of you guys have in front of you a booklet. It's a teal booklet. It says Building Brentwood. I want you to get that out and open it up to the center fold. And I'm going to invite Pastor Jon, my awesome husband, if you didn't know, to the stage. And he is going to go through this booklet and share with you how you can take part in this awesome Building Brentwood campaign.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. You guys give her some love. Give her some love. Okay, so let's talk about this. That card that you have in front of you is really what we've been talking about, what we've been preparing for really the whole series. The first 3 weeks we've been talking about, okay, let's get ready for this. Let's start praying for this. Let's start preparing for this. And then there's going to become a moment where we actually say, okay, now we're going to take some tangible things home. We've seen the building or a general idea of what it's going to look like. We know a cost within a few $100,000, right? We know what we need to raise and how much has already been pledged. Here's the thing. The timing and the approach of this is really determined by this room. I'm gonna say that again. The timing when we start this, whether it's 6 months from now or 3 years from now, and the approach, what this building will ultimately look like when it is complete, has to do with this room. So if you call Brentwood Church home, I want you to take that card home and sit down with your household, whether that's you and your spouse, or you, your spouse and your kids, or whoever that is, and just say, okay, we have 2 weeks to really get on our knees, prepare our provisions, and really say, where are we going to go with this? And that's really what we want to ask right now. So the question and the statements, will you be a part of Building Brentwood? Will you be a part of it? Will you be a part of what is going to happen? And I'm going to tell you how you can do that. I'm going to share with you ways that you can approach this. But it goes back to this. Where am I in this journey? Where am I in this journey? Israel walked across a river that had been parted for them. The leaders led the way. But it says that they gathered 12 stone representatives of their tribe and put them on there. And they said, this is God's faithfulness. This is what God has done already in our lives, in the past. This is what he's doing in the present. And this is what we believe him to do based upon our present and our past experience with him. And that's really where I want you to answer that question. God, how have you been faithful? And how do you want me to be faithful in return? Remember, greater growth requires greater worship. And one of the most tangible ways that we worship is we worship by saying, God, you can have it all. My mind, my heart, my soul, my strength. And part of that strength is the tangible things of our life, and that is our finances, our resources. And saying, I am going to give a portion of that to you. There are 3 ways that you can give to this. Number 1, your income. Surprise, surprise. Most of you, in fact, I would say 90% of you, have a job. And they pay you for that job. And in that, you can say, this is one way that I can contribute over the next 3 years to Building Brentwood. Now, I want to break that down and talk to 3 different groups of people. The first group I want to talk to are people who believe and follow Jesus. You believe in the local church, but you've never actually practiced giving to the church. For whatever reason, you've told yourself a story, well, maybe that's not for me, We can't afford to do it right now. I didn't know that this actually costs money. Okay, whatever that is. Last week I talked about giving the first and the 10. That's one of the basic 101 ways that you can begin to give to a church. Has nothing to do with your salvation. Jesus Christ paid for that on a cross. He died for your sins and mine. And through faith, we are saved by that reality. He rose from the dead. But if we want to be obedient and faithful and join God in what he's doing, then we will contribute portions of our income to what God is doing, and in this case, his church. If you are a person who's never given regularly to a church, I want to invite you to pledge, very simply. If you look at that little pledge card, you just start giving to the church. Start giving to the church. And maybe you want to just say, we're going to do this for the next 3 years, and I promise you, you will see what God will begin to do tangibly and intangibly in your life. But for you, Building Brentwood is about saying, we're going to start giving, and we're going to start giving regularly to our church. And you just write that down. You just say, over the next 3 years, I'm going to give weekly, monthly, or whatever, and I'm going to write it down. I'm going to put my rock on the pile, if you will. And in 2 weeks, we're going to all collect these together on Commitment Sunday. Next week is Easter. We're going to get our Easter on, okay? Yeah. We're going to see some and hear some incredible stories. The week after that, we bring this series home and we put our rock, if you will, on the pile, on the memorial. So if you've never given to a church before and you believe and follow Jesus, this is your time to start. This is your time to start. There's never a better time. Second, some of you give irregularly. You know that it's important to give to the church, and you know that not any one person can fund it all, and you believe that that's true, but you've really gotten to a place where you just go, I'll give when I can. And you may not call it like this, but you kind of give your leftovers. You know, if I have something left over in 3 months or in 6 months or at the end of the year, I'll give a portion of that to my church. Here's what I want to say to you. I'm glad that you give. It's time for you to grow in this area and start to give regularly. Why? Because the timing and the approach of this is not really determined by the people on this stage. It's the people on the stage and the people right out here. It's us. It's us. The men and women of this church who've given regularly and consistently over the years, they've gone before you. And they've said, we will give over and above what we already give. And they've said, 2 whatever million. And I want to thank those people. I want to say thank you for giving regularly and agreeing with God and with this church to give even more over the next 3 years. And now it's your turn. It's your turn, if you give sporadically or irregularly, to say, I'm going to put my rock, if you will, on the memorial and say, we are going to give a certain portion regularly every single paycheck. So you can give through your income. Now, many of you already give and you give faithfully. I had a guy come up to me afterwards and says, I give and I give regularly, and we just need to know, is this over and above? Is it separate? You know, is there another way? And we're gonna tell you, we're gonna share with you how that you make that separate in a couple weeks. But right now, it is, yes, over and above what you already regularly give if you are one of those men and women that have faithfully and regularly given portions of your income over the last few years. We want you to pray through this. Take 2 weeks, get on your knees, get around the coffee table, the dinner table, whatever it is that you do, the fire, and talk with your family and say, where are we in this? Because over the next 3 years, we will be giving towards this united sacrifice, united obedience, and the miraculous work of God to build Brentwood. So income is one of the ways, in fact, a primary way that many of you will do this. You will either start giving, you will start giving regularly, or you will give over and above what you already give in your income. Next, appreciated assets. These are things beyond your income. These are real estate investments. These are stocks. These are bonds. These are things that you have invested in. You see them accruing over time. If you were to sell them, you would make a profit. If you were to cash them in, you would be able to see that money liquid, if you will, or in your hands. We will be sharing with you ways that you can take those appreciated assets and give them towards Building Brentwood. In fact, I'm going to have some people who are much smarter than me in this area come up in the next couple weeks to share ways that you can do that. If all else fails, though, questions@brentwoodchurch.org. Questions@brentwoodchurch.org. If you're like, hey, I just have a question about the building. I have a question about the square footage cost. I have a question about this. I have a question about that. Where did Tammy get her shoes? Because they were really cool. I mean, whatever. Questions@brentwoodchurch.org. And that will be your gateway into these answers. Appreciated assets. Number 3, a primary way that you can give is collectibles. Yes, some of you have baseball card collections from the 1980s that your wife has been saying, would you please build Brentwood with those? So I'm tired of them. You have a comic book collection from the 90s. Whatever, you have, I don't know what it is, but you know that it's worth something to somebody, and if you were to sell it, you could give it to Building Brentwood. And these are creative ways for you to think through, okay, you know what? I never thought about that football that was signed by Vince Lombardi. Like that might be worth like a lot of money, and it's sitting in my attic, and I could sell that and give that money to my church. I could make a big, huge contribution to that memorial, if you will, that is Building Brentwood, and build something that matters most to God. So we want you to make this personal. Speaking of personal, in Joshua 4:9, look what it says. It says, Joshua also set apart another pile of 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan. What's Joshua doing here? He's saying, okay, I know we're going to do this collective memorial. I know we're going to have each of the 12 tribes pile a stone on this, but I want to make this personal. And so what does Joshua do? He says, at that place where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing, he built this personal memorial, and they are there to this day. They are there to this day. What happens? Joshua put his own memorial stones there. And it says that they're there to this day, at least the writing of this book. Can you imagine what that's going to look like? When we contribute together and we see a 24/7 ministry space just an eighth of a mile down Hooper Road, that people pass and they will pass and they will pass for decades and decades and seasons to come. And you, while you are a part of what God is doing here, and you see your children or your future children, your grandchildren or your future grandchildren growing up and going to new and deeper levels with Jesus Christ in that space, you, like Israel, can say, I was collectively a part of that. You, like Joshua, can say, man, this was personal to me. This was personal to me. And ultimately, Brentwood Church, that's what it has to get to. It has to get personal. It has to get to a place where we just say, you know what? This church, God has used to build my life. He's used to restore my family. He's used to develop my leadership. He's used to create new connections in my life that will be a part of my life for the rest of my life. And I know that I'm not the exception. I'm not the person who's going to say, yeah, I believe and follow Jesus, and yeah, I believe in what God's doing in this church, but I'm not going to be a part of this. You instead, like so many, are going to say, I'm going to put my rock on the memorial, and then I'm going to make it personal. I'm going to put my stone right here, and I'm going to make it personal. And so I want you to practice that a little bit today. Today, we introduce a new way to respond. If you're new to Brentwood Church, we have response stations on either side of the front and towards the back. There you can, every week, if you believe and follow Jesus, you can take the communion elements, the bread and the wine, the body and the blood of Christ. And I encourage people to do that every week. You can light a candle of intercessory prayer. Just say, I'm praying for this person's breakthrough. You can write down a prayer request and put it at that cross, and there are men and women in this church that will carry that with you. There are care and response world changers who are down here every week and in the back in the care room that are there to respond in prayer. And all of that today is open, and we want you to step out. But there is a pile of rocks at each one of these stations that look very similar to this. They're not as big as the rocks that those 12 men carried on their shoulders, but probably a lot like the rocks that Joshua built his own personal memorial with. And here's what I want you to do today. In fact, I want everybody to participate on some level, maybe during the song or after the song that we're going to close with. And I want you to take one of these rocks, and I want you to go, wow, greater growth requires greater worship. And worship is the past, it's the present, it's the future. It's almost a memorial that's in all space and time, where I look back at how God has been faithful in the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful seasons of my life. His power and his presence has been. I look right now and I sing this song, I give this income, I step across the river, I walk across the room in obedience. And then you look ahead in the future. Here's what I want you to do in an act of worship today. Just make a memorial today. And go to these tables and write down maybe a word or two. Just say, a healing that God did in your life. Maybe restoration of a marriage. Maybe it was him restoring your faith in a dark season. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was whatever. Write a word or two, or if you can fit it, a paragraph on this little rock. And then just put it in the pile that you see there. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to collect these piles over the next season of our church. And we're going to find a place in our new building where we're going to display these for many seasons to come. And so we're going to start to collect the wonder of God written on these memorial stones today. The wonder of God, where God has shown himself in powerful ways in our life, or ways that we know he's going to show up and show off in our future. And during this song, you just write that down and put that there. And maybe you want to take communion and then do that. Maybe you want to light a candle and do that. Maybe you just want to do that today. But be a part of Building Brentwood today and over the next 2 weeks. Start to believe. Start to dig deep into what God is doing and what you know he's going to do. Let's stand right now. Father, in the name of your son, Jesus, I petition you to take these words that we're about to sing and let them be anthems. Let them be poetic prose or narratives of our lives with you. Let them be declarations of what is going on in our heart or what we want again in our heart. That we want you to take our hearts, our minds, our souls, our strength, our past, our present, and our future, and have it all. Because we know that greater growth requires greater worship, and today we step into a greater place of worship. I know that there are people here today who've just now started to believe in you, who've just now started to step forward into what you're doing in their life. Father, in the name of Jesus, open their hearts and minds to new things that you're doing. Let them sing. Let them sing this anthem. Father, I pray that you move people in this moment, and you move people over these next 2 weeks to really be united in sacrifice and obedience, but to expect your miraculous work in this season. And I pray this in the name of your son, Jesus Christ. Amen.